to acknowledge and recognize that we are holding this meeting.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, yes. My apologies. We are recording the meeting today. Again, to begin, I would like to acknowledge and recognize that we are holding this meeting on the traditional and territorial and ancestral lands of the Ojibwe people from the Garden River and Batchewana First Nations. To the Anishinaabeg people, this sacred and spiritual place has been known since time as the Memorial Boating. We wish to honor the original people of this part of Turtle Island as we recognize their homelands in spirit of partnership and reconciliation. The Chamber of Commerce believes that there is great value in holding open discussions with our elected officials. Today's format allows us to cover issues of public interest and interests specific to the business community in an informal manner. As a chamber, we also feel that it is important that we provide our members with the opportunity to remain engaged with our elected representatives. We have navigated the challenges related to COVID-19 during the last 2 years. We have looked to our municipal elected leaders to guide the city and to work with our local health unit, our school boards, and our employers to support the business community. So before we move on to our fireside portion of today's agenda, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge some special guests joining us today. So members of council, we have Marky Rooney, thank you. We have some members of the Sault Ste. Marie board. We have Jennifer Rushton, Michael Stone, Salvatore Marchese, of course, Derek Jackson, who's hosting our chat this afternoon, and Jason Nacarotto. We also have our special guest, Mike McQuaid, President and CEO of Algoma Steel, joining us, as well as some of our local media, Sault Today, Sault Online, and the Sault Star.
If I can, Trish, just to recognize too that we see that Randy Shuren has joined us from our board of directors as well.
Thank you. Yes, and Randy.
And
Ian
of Grant.
Course, we wouldn't. And of course, today we wouldn't be here without our Chamber of Commerce staff. Oh, and there's Ian as well. Our members, Maggie Murray, Don Ferguson, and of course, Rory Ring. Today's fireside chat will be led by Derek Jackson of Wardlaw Heating and Cooling. Derek currently serves as the Chamber Treasurer and the Chair of the Strive Young Professionals Group. Derek, I'm handing it over to you.
Awesome, great. Welcome everybody. Thank you, Trish. Before we get started and dive in here, we have just a few words about our special guest today. So like many of us here, Christian Provenzano was born and raised in Sault Ste. Marie, where he then attended St. Mary's College High School before proceeding to complete his Bachelor of Arts honors at University of Waterloo. In 1998, Christian was elected as the president of University of Waterloo's Federation of Students. In this leadership role, he represented the university's 17,000 students at the federal, provincial, and municipal levels of government. Christian then studied law at Dalhousie University until 2001 and completed his bar administration course with the Law Society of Upper Canada in 2002. Since 2002, Christian has been practicing law at Provenzano Law in downtown Sault Ste. Marie. Christian's most gratifying professional accomplishments to date are rooted in public service, committing his time, energy, and skills to worthwhile organizations and causes where he can help make a real positive difference in both his community and the lives of others. He has been actively involved with a long list of local organizations, volunteering his time and expertise with groups such as Habitat for Humanity Sault Ste. Marie, the United Way's Fundraising Cabinet, Big Brothers of Sault Ste. Marie, Children's Rehabilitation Center Algoma, now known as Thrive, the Sault's Youth Association, the Rotary Club of Sault Ste. Marie, Sault Peewee, the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce, and the Algoma District Law Society. As vice chair of the Algoma Nurse Practitioner-led clinic, Christian was proud to assist in an effort that has improved healthcare services in Sault Ste. Marie. In addition to practicing law, Christian has employment experience in hospitality, retail, automotive manufacturing, university administration, and the federal public service. Christian has taught in the Department of Law and Politics at Algoma University, and he has completed his Master's of Law at York University Osgoode Hall School. Welcome, Christian.
Welcome, Derek. Thank you for that. I
not necessary, but appreciate that acknowledgement. I want to begin by thanking you and the Chamber for hosting this event, frankly, for hosting me for the last 7 years. It's been enjoyable to get together with you and talk about our community. And I want to recognize the really tremendous work that you've done, that Strive's done, that the Chamber's done to assist and support our community throughout the pandemic. You've been showing some real leadership, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we're happy to have you here. That's for sure. We're going to dive right in here. We have a few questions that we've drafted with help from our membership, and I know they're excited to get in. So we'll start right away. First of all, how are you and how have you been managing through this pandemic?
Well, I wasn't expecting that question. I think I'm doing pretty well. Like everybody else, it's been a challenging couple of years to manage, your professional responsibilities and your personal responsibilities, and make the adjustments you've had to make and sacrifices you've had to make to try and follow the public health regulations. So I think it's been challenging in all of us, and I want to recognize really the strength the community has shown and showed for a long time, and really working hard together to keep our COVID rates low. And felt a lot of pride to be one of the political leaders of our community during that time. I think we really showed our stuff, and it made my job, frankly, a little easier. But it's been a long and challenging couple of years. We at the city are also a municipal corporation that has staff and that has to provide services, and our staff were impacted by the pandemic the same way other staffs across the city are. So on top of managing kind of the governance of the city, we have to also manage our own staff and make sure we're doing what we need to be doing to take care of them and to make sure that they are properly respected. And it's been a challenging couple of years for everybody, but we've got through it so far. Hopefully we are seeing kind of the beginning of a change in a different day. On that note, we should all be mindful of the fact that case counts aren't dropping. We're not tracking them the way we used to track them. We're not testing the way we used to test. So we don't have the data that we used to have, but wastewater sampling seems to indicate across Ontario that cases are rising. So I think we have to be very sensitive to that to make sure that our hospital capacity isn't taxed. And I think we're all, as employers, going to see some significant absenteeism in the near term. And so we'll all have to also be patient with one another as we work through that and try and provide the services that we're all required and expected to provide at our own respective private and public sector agencies. So to circle back to the point of your question, Derek, I'm doing just fine, and I'm really heartened by the community and the steel that it showed over the last couple of years.
Great, thank you. To continue on that positive note, as you said, we've been meeting now for 7 years in your mayoral term. And what would you identify as some of your top 3 successes in the recent time?
So, I appreciate you sent me this question ahead of time, and I have a certain amount of discomfort with it. It's a completely appropriate question. I'm not entirely comfortable talking about myself and what I think I accomplished. I think that's for other people to judge, and I think that other people kind of will have their own assessments and opinions on that. I'd say, just generally speaking, there are some things that I feel very proud of, and I think we're very positive. But just speaking generally, I think we've demonstrated over the last number of years really responsible government here at the municipality. I think there's been a high level of respectful and cooperative discussion at City Council. I think there's been a really high level of good working relationships between the governance of the municipality and the operation of the municipality. I think council has worked well with staff, and staff has worked well with council. So, it's been an incredibly gratifying experience. I've learned a lot and grown a lot, in the role, and I really appreciate the community giving me the privilege of serving in this role for 2 terms. But as far as identifying, what I think are my greatest successes, I'm not really entirely comfortable doing that. And one of the reasons why is I think when you're the mayor, really, there's no success that is your own. When you're the mayor, you have one vote, and there's a couple things that you have to be mindful of. you can't move anything forward without the support of council. So every time council passes a resolution, whether that resolution comes from me or comes from someone else, it's council's resolution. So the successes that we've experienced over the last 7-8 years have been council successes. And the challenges that we have faced, even if I've at times them kind of the point of the spear, are council's challenges, and council face those. And nothing happens without staff. You know, council could pass all the resolutions it likes. It could pass dozens of resolutions and meetings, but you don't get anywhere, you don't move anything forward unless you have the engaged and cooperative commitment from your staff. So you know, I think there's a lot to celebrate over the last number of years, and I'll let people kind of make their own determinations on that. But I want to recognize, frankly, all the city councilors that I've worked with, and I want to recognize staff for their support and their collaborative approach to trying to get things done for the city.
Great, thank you. Have there been any challenges that you've been working on that you feel you are leaving kind of unaccomplished that you're hoping will continue to go through with new leadership or new council? Yeah,
there are, and I think that's a question I'm comfortable answering. Look, one of the heaviest, most challenging parts of the mayoralty to me has been an inability to really move the yardsticks forward in a meaningful way on the opioid epidemic. And that's been challenging. It's been challenging personally. It's been challenging to not be able to more productively address a challenge and a problem the community clearly faces. And that's something that has to be addressed on a going forward basis. I'm encouraged that I'm seeing kind of larger sums of money being announced in other communities for care. I saw a substantial announcement for Thunder Bay, and there are some other Northern Ontario communities who seem to be getting some significant resources. Our community certainly needs more resources. As you're all aware, I was a very, I think, prominent and aggressive and consistent supporter of Surrey Hospital's 2017 proposal. Fortunately, that didn't go anywhere. I think we really need to revisit something of that size and scope. The significant reality of the situation is we don't have the healthcare infrastructure that we need to provide the care that we need. That's not to say that we don't have healthcare infrastructure. That's not to say that we don't have care providers that are doing their best. That's not to say that we don't have services in our community that are trying to serve and assist people. We do, but we need more, and we need a more significant, robust system to deal with the mental health and addictions challenges we have. So that's something that will have to be dealt with. It's something that I would have liked to make more progress on, but being something that's largely outside of the municipal realm, I wasn't as successful as I would have liked to be, and I own that. I think whenever there is a challenge in a community, it's incumbent upon all of the community's political leadership to address that challenge, and I'm part of that. And the challenge was not adequately addressed, and I'm not going to take the position that that's not something that I wasn't part of or that I'm not ultimately responsible for, even if it isn't in my jurisdictional realm. You need to convene people, you need to push, you need to get things together. And frankly, like, considering that we are still dealing with a significant challenge, we didn't do enough, and we is all of us. And so I'm part of that we. That weighs on me. I think it'll weigh on me for years. And I'm hopeful that the next council will be able to more effectively move the yardsticks in that respect with our provincial and federal partners than I was able to. One of the other things that I think is really coming along, but not yet completed, is our downtown plans. But I'm going to wait until you ask me about that, Derek, so I don't eat up the clock on that question now, because I know you're going to be asking me about that. And then, you know, there's just the ongoing kind of challenges that you face. New ones will come up, but I'm really confident with the city administration that we currently have and that we're developing, and that I'll be leaving here, that we'll be able to really support council through the next stage of the community's development.
Thank you. I appreciate your candor with that answer, and I think it's something that many people in our community will continue to work hard to make an impact on. You mentioned downtown, so we might as well jump right in there. And I know a lot of downtown businesses and employers also are hoping to see some solutions towards our opioid epidemic as they're witnessing it firsthand in those specific areas even more so. But how do you see our downtown progressing? It's been something you've put a lot of time and effort into in your term. But what do you see for the future in our downtown?
Look, I think we've got a great plan, and I want to really kind of make the point here that the plan was thoughtful, based on a lot of work and study and a lot of collaboration. And we brought in an external expert to give us some advice. I want to recognize the really great work of the Downtown Association, and thank them for working as closely as they work with the city. But this is something that we set out to really focus on, really at the beginning of my first term. And it was something that was identified in the community plan, independent of me, as a priority. So it is one of the community's priorities. It's one of the community's main priorities. And so it's really holistic. So I'd like to walk through it a bit. One of the main things we did, which was and completed now, which I think has really been really well received, is we've really changed Bay Street. And I think that's a positive. It in a way brings Queen Street closer to the water. We had a 4 to 5 laneway traffic, essentially a small gardener going through our downtown. We got you through the downtown on time lights in a couple minutes, and now we've got a much more beautiful street there. We have a streetscaping designs currently underway for Queen Street. I think Queen Street, I was hoping Queen Street would be on the books and we'd start that this year. Doesn't look like that will be the case. It looks like we'll probably do it in 2023. So that's something that I hope continues to move forward. But we also have some streetscaping plans for Spring Street. You'll if you're paying attention to council, you'll recognize that we are rebuilding the boardwalk that's going to run alongside the marina. So the boardwalk's going to come around, it's going to go through the marina. We've invested in our marina and improved our marina. And when you walk up that boardwalk, you're essentially looking at Spring Street. And we have some streetscaping designs for Spring Street, and there's I think it's a Dutch term, it's called a woonerf. Woonerf is a pedestrian street, a street that can be closed, so it's just pedestrian traffic. And we're looking at doing that, and we're looking at really connecting the water to right through Bay Street to Queen Street. And as you're aware, that street is right beside our plaza project. These things are all done thoughtfully in coordination with one another. One of the things that Roger Brooks told us is we needed a heart. We needed something to focus on in the center of our downtown. And I believe that the private sector has demonstrated a significant investment in the downtown over the last couple of years. A lot of private sector dollars have went in the downtown. And I think the city has a responsibility to recognize that and to make its own investments in its own infrastructure. I think it is going to be a really positive thing for our community when we turn what is essentially a bit of a dreary parking space that the city largely owns into a really active and vibrant heart of our downtown. And the key component of that is the Mill Market. We have known for a long time the Mill Market wasn't going to stay where it was. It was put in a building, it was originally put in the fish hatchery building for about a 6-month period. That's been years now. That building needs significant capital, but it's not a building that you want to put capital into. And we want to develop the gateway site in any event. So I think if you can just imagine all of the activity that we would see at the Mill Market, if we now take that activity and we put that activity in the middle of our downtown, the heart of our downtown, that productive, healthy, active kind of lifestyle, those activities, those people coming for really positive and productive gatherings will have a consequential effect on the rest of downtown. We have hundreds of businesses and property owners in the downtown, and we have to make sure that we're doing things in a mindful and respectful way so that their investments are treated as respectfully and as valued as investments happening elsewhere in our community. And I really think, and I've told city staff this, and I hope to see it soon. I really think if the community could see Bay Street, Queen Street, the Plaza, Spring Street, and how it all ties together, I think they would be very excited about the whole project and the Mill Market going where the Mill Market's going to go. So the one thing, Derek, that I want to make sure I see through is the completion of that project. The reality of it with the timing of tenders and the timing of construction, It doesn't look like I'm going to be able to see it through because we won't be able to get to Queen Street and Spring Street for another couple of years. So I really hope the next council sees the value of that project. I hope they see the importance of it. I hope they see the thoughtful and substantive work that went into it. I hope they see and respect the decisions that the last two councils made to get us to this point, and I hope to finish it, because I am confident that is one of the significant quality of life investments that will help us attract people to our community. Look, you know, communities, municipalities are competitive now with one another. Municipalities have branding, we have branding, municipalities are advertising for people to come to move to their communities. We're in that game, we're doing the same work other municipalities are doing it. I'd argue that we got out ahead of a lot of other municipalities in that respect in Northern Ontario, but the reality is we're competing. And when you're competing, you have to have assets that you can show to people. You have to have a quality of life, and you have to have an attractiveness that people come here and they say, yeah, I want to live in this community. And I frankly think when we complete this project, I think it'll be a transformational project for our downtown core. So I'm excited about it. We're getting there. I'm hoping that the tenders close for the plaza project shortly. I'm hoping council makes a decision on that shortly and we get some shovels in the ground there. We've got a tender out for design services for the mill market. Hopefully that comes back and that's within the realm where we can move forward with that quickly. I know staff's working on Spring Street. I know staff's working on Queen Street. I know we've got a $500,000 grant to help us get that piece of the boardwalk in along the marina. So it's coming together. I think it's really positive. I think it's really productive, and I think it's really respectful of the businesses and the private sector investments in our downtown core.
Great, thank you. I do just want to acknowledge, I see we do have a question. If you don't mind, if you just put a couple questions in the chat for now, and if we do have time, we will circle back to some Q&A here. I just want to do a quick follow-up with the downtown plans and the plaza and everything that you've mentioned there. We've seen a growth and a huge growth actually in the support of arts and our culture here in our community in the last few years. How do you think the development of our downtown will impact events and music and arts and that culture?
Well, you know, the plaza project would be like a tremendous example of how we can support and improve arts and culture. There will be public art in that project. I know we've been working with our Indigenous communities to really do some recognition of our Indigenous communities with some public art within that project. And you know, you hope, and the intention is that the plaza will become a gathering space. There will be, if things come within budget, an ability to do kind of events there, music. There'll be like you can have community groups book the area to you know, you can do outdoor plays, you can do all kinds of different things at the event. So I think there's been an adjustment at the municipality to make more of a significant investment in arts and culture. We saw that discussion at the last council meeting. There was an ask that from the cultural committee that we commit 1% of every project budget specifically to public art and arts and culture initiatives. Council is looking at that and asked staff to come back with some ways that would be funded and how we could actually move that forward in a fiscally responsible way. So hopefully we'll continue to make these investments. It's important. You know, to have a vibrant community, to have a community that young people are attracted to move to and want to raise a family in. You have to offer these amenities. You have to offer those dynamics in your community, and it's important to people. It's important to people to have places to get out and engage. It's important to people to have places where they can get out and enjoy art, and it's important to people to see culture celebrated. And I think we recognize that we're taking a much more holistic approach to economic development. We recognize that all those aspects add to economic development, but ultimately the fundamental thing is the human resource capacity. We have to build a community that people want to move to and live in, stay in, move to and reside in. And if we do that, we'll have the people here that we need. And if we have the people here that we need, economy will follow.
Perfect. That leads me right into our next question. I think young professionals and young people specifically looking at communities, arts and culture are a huge part of the community they're wanting to move to. What are some of the upcoming opportunities that the city of Sault Ste. Marie has that will help achieve its the 10,000 person population growth as forecasted in the official plan?
Yeah. So that's a great question, Derek. That document that you're referring to, that consultant report, what that was saying was that, and this might be hard to get your mind around, and I understand if it would be, because when I first went through it myself, I had a difficult time with it. That's actually that 10,000 increase. What that's referring to in that report is what they're saying is that's going to happen naturally. I don't know that that's the case. I still think you have to be mindful and focus on making the right investments to make it happen. What that report's saying is we've got a number of people that will be retiring from the workforce. And if people come here to occupy those jobs, so if those people don't leave at a certain rate, so they retire but stay, and then people come here to take those jobs and occupy those jobs, and we don't lose the jobs to elsewhere. And that's something we should circle back to and talk about. It's one of the reasons why it's so important that we attract people to move here. If those jobs are occupied, and then as our community ages, and we have one of the older demographics in the province of Ontario, I think we're about 6 years older than the provincial average. Those people, more people will need care. So there'll be more jobs in the care industry, and personal support workers and elderly care. If the natural course of things, they're saying in that report, your population should increase by 10,000 people. So that report actually isn't telling us to do anything specifically to make it increase by 10,000 people. That noted, I think it's important that you do things specifically. And I've talked about quality of life investments. I've talked about arts and culture investments. I won't kind of re-speak about those. But we've been very active at trying to become a community that is in the migration and immigration game. You know, we rebranded early, and we've been kind of advertising. And I know a number of you have seen these advertisements, you know, broadly to sell people on Sault Ste. Marie. We've developed materials that are outward looking, that people can come to and see jobs and see the quality of life our community has to offer. But we've also really got in the immigration game. And, you know, we were one of the lead communities advocating and asking the federal government to create an immigration portal for communities like ours. That was successful, and they created it. We then applied to become part of it. We were successful there. We became part of it. And then we were the first community to use it. And we, I think, in all the 11 communities that were allowed into, that were permitted into RNIP, I think we've used it more than any other community. So we have to do more of that, because as we see with the most recent census, and when it came out, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised because, you know, when you take a look at our obituaries and you take a look at our birth announcements, you know, one is significantly higher than the other. And over the last couple of years, you know, and I'm just speaking in general numbers here, I want to thank the Innovation Center, because Tom had them dig into this and they sent us a good report. You know, our death rate doubled our birth rate. So if you have 1,000 people that are dying, but 500 people that are being born, even if you are attracting people to your community, your population is going to go in the wrong direction. So because of our structural, you asked about challenges on a going forward basis, Derek. We've got a bit of a structural demographic challenge in our community. We've known about it for a long time. We discussed it, you know, in depth in Future Sault Ste. Marie, and we're seeing it play out now in real life. So because we have an older population, you know, we are losing more people than we're gaining. So you got to work even harder to gain those people, because if we don't have a human resource available here to an employer, the job will move. Now, like if you take, I see Mr. McQuaid on the line here, I appreciate his attendance. If you take Algoma Steel, those jobs aren't going to move because the people have to be present in the community to do those jobs. But if you take an employer like OLG, which would be a great example, OLG operates from 2 locations. So if OLG can't find somebody in Sault Ste. Marie to do a job, they'll turn around and say, well, we can find somebody in Southern Ontario to do that job, which is why we need to be really aggressive about marketing ourselves and investing in our community. And we're doing both those things. So, you know, we need to keep on doing them. And I'm confident that as we do them and as we continue to do them, we'll get even better at them. So we're doing both those things, and we're also really advocating for immigration, and we'll continue to do that.
Great, thank you. We'll get right into it now here with a little bit of a different topic. The cities potentially will have a multi-million-dollar windfall with the new impact assessments and increased home values. What will this look like for taxpayers in all classes, but especially for our industrial commercial sectors?
Okay, so there's a distinction I want to make here. So there's two different things that we need to talk about this properly. There's a big difference between the increased value of current assessment and new assessment, right? So as the chambers pointed out, our ratios, and the ratios are relate to residential, commercial, industrial. So our ratios of how those tax rates relate to one another have become skewed, and they were, and our ratio essentially was getting outside of the acceptable norm of those ratios, where our ratio of industrial taxes to residential taxes was getting to a place where we had to be much more mindful of that. And then there's obviously the rates, right? So, but let's just take this as I'll give you some numbers here to try and demonstrate the point I'm going to ultimately try and make. I think it's important we all understand this when it comes to municipal taxes. So let's just take a round number here. Our municipal only budget, let's say, is about 130 million. So that's the municipal corporation. And then let's take policing, which we levy for, and it's a service that we are responsible under Municipal Act for providing. We contract that service out to the Sault Ste. Police Service Board. They provide that service. That costs, let's say our budget's 132, policing's 33. So that you're 165 with policing. And that is not include anything that relates to the DSAB or social services or emergency medical response. So let's just take a budget of 165 million. If we've got 125 houses and 50 commercial enterprises and 25 industrial enterprises, that 160 million is amortized across those 200 units, the 125 residential units, the 50 commercial units, the 25 industrial units. So we take that 160, we amortize it across those units in accord with those ratios. So if the value of those units goes up, and it's going to go up, our last assessment was 2016. There was supposed to be a reassessment in 2020. It was put off to 2021 because of COVID, then again 2022, and now I think it's going to happen in 2023. So we've never had a benefit of a reassessment since 2016, and the reassessment in 2016 wasn't very helpful because we had a big drop in industrial value. So we had a big loss in industrial value in 2016, which really is what affected our ratios. So, but if the value of those 200 units goes up, it helps you rebalance your ratios, and it will drop the rates, but it doesn't change the fact that you're amortizing 165 million over 200 units, right? So you don't see a lot of relief as far as what you're paying. There are different kind of capping and clawback mechanisms that try and make sure the tax rate, that the taxes paid don't actually get too fluctuate year from year, but you're still amortizing 165 over 200 units. So the reassessment isn't necessarily going to give us a lot of actual dollars out of pocket relief. The reassessment will help us rebalance our ratios. So it might help one class more than another class. The reassessment will certainly bring down the rates. But as I pointed out, I think in one of my first, it might have been 2015 or 2016, the residential rate was dropping. But what people were actually paying for the residential taxes wasn't dropping because the value of their house was going up. So when the value of your house goes up, the rate that we have to apply to that to get the dollars we need to run the municipality goes down. So what, Derek, I think will be very helpful, and it will happen, and we're seeing it now. Last year, there were 2021, there were $220 million of permits pulled. Like it is a tremendous number for our community. We have hundreds of millions of dollars that are going to be invested in our industrial sector over the next number of years. And we're seeing a demand for housing. So we are seeing new units go online. So what you need to do is you need to grow that 200 units to 250 units. And when you get actually 250 units, then you're amortizing that $165 million over a larger assessment base. So it's not the increase in the value of the assessment that's really going to help us bring down the taxes payable. It's the addition of assessment that's going to actually help us bring down the taxes payable. So I don't expect there's going to be a big windfall for in the next year council once the reassessment takes place, where they're going to have a bunch of kind of found money where they can have a 0% increase. Hope they do. But I do think that it's going to be easier for future councils based on what's happening now. And I do see additional assessment being added. You can't have $221 million of permits being pulled in 2021 and not have that have a positive effect. But really what we need to see to bring down taxes paid by people is new and additional assessment on top of the assessment we already have. But I do expect there to be a rebalancing after the next MPAC assessment. I do think our ratios are going to come back in line. And although it might not have a material effect on the tax you pay, the rates will drop, which based on the chamber's position over the last number of years, hopefully will please the chamber.
Great, thank you. Last year, the city posted a $34 million surplus for 2020, and in 2019, a $20 million surplus. And yet these rate increases remain prevalent. What is the rationale, and what will the audit statements report for 2021?
So listen, Derek, I think I understand what you're looking at here, or whoever wrote the questions looking at here, but it's not entirely an accurate question, because our surplus for 2020 was just over $1 million. It was about 1.1 million. And our surplus for 2019 was under $500,000. Those are actually the surpluses that we posted. But I think the numbers you're looking at, or again, whoever the author of the question was, that includes some assets the city has. So that's like equity, right? So the city has a $30 million loan to the PUC. So that $30 million loan shows in our books. To access that equity, we would have to call the loan, and we currently get interest on that loan. So actually the interest on that loan helps us, that goes into our budget. If we didn't have the interest from that loan, we would have to make up for that. That would probably be a levy increase. But if we pulled that $30 million back from the PUC, we would have $30 million over here. The PUC would then have a different loan on its books because they would have to borrow that $30 million to give to us. And so the PUC would still owe $30 million. It would just owe it to a different party as opposed to us, and we own it. And then we'd have $30 million sitting here. Now that $30 million is money that we could invest and generate income from, or it's money we could spend on capital projects. And there's been some discussion about that $30 million over the course of my council terms. There's been some discussion about it, like with the PUC, with the PUC board, with the PUC executive and our executive over here at City Hall. You know, just to always keep in touch about it, talk about it, figure out the best way to finance things at the PUC, figure out whether it makes sense for the PUC to still hold that loan, figure out whether it makes sense for the city to get that equity back. But one of the things you're identifying here is really equity that we have. It's not a budget surplus. Our budget surpluses, I don't think, have exceeded $1.5 million, certainly not 2 million since I've been here. And they're roughly somewhere between $500,000 and $1.5 million every year. If you think about that, you know, and if our budget's, you know, 160 million, just rough numbers, you're looking at, we're coming within 1% of it, pretty much on a year-over-year basis. I think that's some pretty tight budgeting, but I also think it's some pretty you know, focused spending, and to make sure that we don't go over budget. Like I can tell you this, 100%, if there was a $30 million surplus anytime I'd been here, I would have saw to the budget being cut by a very significant amount of money, because you should never budget $30 million more than you need to spend. But I can assure you that we haven't done that, and we won't do that.
All right, thank you. So when we can expect an audit statement report for 2021, do we expect it'll have a similar trend to the last couple of years then, because our budgets have been aligned?
Yeah, I do expect it'll be similar. Yeah, I don't think the surplus, if any, will be out of line with the surpluses that you've seen historically. every quarter council gets a report seeing how things are tracking, and I haven't seen anything that would indicate that we're tracking in an anomalous way to have a significantly higher surplus this year than we have in past years.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to a different topic here. So MP Terry Sheehan is convening community stakeholders such as the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce and the City of Sault Ste. Marie to assist however possible with Ukraine refugees who may be located or relocated in Sault Ste. Marie. Can you speak to this at all, and what you hope we as a community may be able to support any Ukraine refugees who come to our city?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. And I want to recognize I was on a call this morning with Terry. The chamber was on the call. Rory was on the call. I want to thank him for his contributions to that, for participating. Sault Community Career Center, who really is, will be like the lead partner in welcoming refugees or essentially establishing the infrastructure to welcome them administratively. And we had the LIP on the call, and Tom Vera from the city was on the call. Reverend Hayes was on the call. Look, if it comes to pass that the federal government wants us to participate in this process, and it seems to be that it does, if it comes to pass that Ukrainian refugees want to move to Sault Ste. Marie, we'll do everything we can to accommodate Ukrainian refugees, make it feel comfortable in our community, and make sure that they have the infrastructure and resources they need to thrive here. There are, I think anybody else in the call this morning would tell you, one of the things that is consistently happening is people are reaching out saying, how can we help? How can we help? What can we do? Tom was talking about like some senior groups that are already talking about what they can do to integrate seniors and welcome seniors. So I can assure the community there's lots of collaboration. I have a tremendous amount of confidence that the community partners will come together as we have in the past and make sure we do a great job. And we've seen that, and we've seen the community's ability to do that. We are a community of immigrants. This community was created and largely based on immigration. There were significant waves of immigration. We have a number of cultural communities here, and that's growing. And I think that's fantastic. I think the college and the university play a really great role in our community in helping diversify our community and help the cultural community here grow. I want to recognize their contributions too in that respect. So I know I had near the end of the call, or I had to get off the call because I had another call I had to get on before this one. You know, I said to the group, and I said to Tom before I said it, we're going to make a whole lot of work for you, but whatever the city needs to do, we'll do. Terry made a good, not Terry, I apologize, Rory made a good suggestion about transportation, bus passes. We'll look at all of that. So we're still early stages. The Community Career Center's in touch with the federal government and staying in touch with them, and they'll keep us apprised of how things are working and what kind of resources are needed. But it's early stages, but we're preparing. I want to thank Terry Sheehan for convening everybody and really kind of working on this and encouraging us to participate in this. And I'm sure Terry would tell you he's received nothing but a positive feedback, and this community will stand up and be there and help out, make a difference.
Great. I know we've been a very welcoming community in the past, and I expect no different. And I do know that our business community is happy to support however we possibly can. So that's wonderful to hear that everyone's working so well together. One question that is always important, especially again to downtown areas, is what's the status of the bus terminal replacement, relocation? What's going on with that situation? Yeah,
so I saw that you wanted to know about that. So I asked staff to give me a quick brief on it. And my understanding that currently city staff are working with the architects that were selected through the RFP to finalize design. So they're finalizing design. Once design's finalized, design will go out to tender. And then when something goes up to tender, the tender comes back, then it gets back to city council. So finalizing design, and then once that's done, it'll go to tender. Once it comes back from tender, council will make a decision on moving forward.
Great. That's pretty clear. Thank you. Before we move into any question and answer periods, I should say, we just want to also ask you, we know that you're in your second term and you've been very clear on your views on term limits. So what's next for Mayor Provenzano after you wrap up your term here?
Yeah, so I will not be running in the next municipal elections. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. But look, I haven't thought a lot past it. Derek, you started by asking me how I'm doing. My life is busy too, right? So I've got a lot of responsibilities. My main feeling is I'm really looking forward to having a little less on my mind and focusing any extra time I do have on my family. And I think a number of people have been asking me, what are you going to do next? And I find it interesting because I do have a job, and I plan to the day I'm no longer the mayor, I plan to go to sleep that night, and the next morning when I wake up, I'm going to go to work. And so those are my plans. I am looking forward to being a private citizen. I am looking forward to focusing on my own interests and my own business, and my wife and my daughters and my parents. I'm grateful that they're still with me, and I'll spend time with my family. I'll spend time with my friends, and I'll really just enjoy whatever comes next. I'm sure I'm a exceedingly fortunate person. I'm very blessed, and I have a lot to look forward to, and I have a lot of confidence that the next stage of my life will be as enriching as this stage has been. This has been, I didn't anticipate, frankly, the degree to which I would appreciate the opportunity to be the mayor, the degree to which I would enjoy it. I didn't anticipate like how important that this stage of my life would be to my professional life. It's been a tremendous experience, and I will leave it with very mixed feelings. But I made a commitment. I made a commitment to the community that I would run 2 terms, and I was clear about that. I've always been clear about that, and there's nothing that's going to stop me from honoring that commitment.
Great, thank you. Is there a message or a goal or any advice that you would leave for the incoming council at the next election?
Well, I think, Derek, municipal politics is the closest level of government to the people. And I think, although we have a lot less authority than the province and the federal government do, and although we have a lot less resources than the province and the federal government do, we touch people's day-to-day lives more significantly. And that a lot of what they do on a day-to-day basis touches a municipal asset or touches a municipal service. The pools and the parks and the roads, and all those things are incredibly important. But we also provide really fundamental services like policing and fire, obviously. And so it's what I would say to anybody that's going to run is it's really important. Municipal governance is really important. So the second thing I would say to them, though, because you're so close to the people, because you're the level of government that is in such close proximity, there can often be a lot of noise, and you have to focus at all times on the community interest. And you cannot get caught up in special interests. And there are some people that don't want to see certain things happen and work hard to make sure certain things don't happen. And you've got to constantly focus on what the community interest is. And you have to trust that if you focus on the community interest and you make decisions in the community interests, those will ultimately benefit your community. Your community will grow, it will be vibrant, it will move forward. You've got to really develop the ability to focus on community interests at the expense of some of the other noise and challenges that you deal with. So the 2 things I guess I would say, and I didn't reflect on this question before you asked it to me, is the work's important. This level of government is very important, and stay focused on the community interest.
Great, thank you. That kind of wraps up our pre-planned question and answer period. And we did discuss before, Mayor Provenzano is happy to answer some questions from everyone here. And I know Robert Peace has a question here. Mayor Provenzano, if you're okay, we're gonna open up the floor here.
Listen, I'm happy to take any question from anyone.
Great, thank you. So I will ask anybody who has any questions or follow-up to please raise their hand, and we will do our best to answer everyone as we go. And I'll take an answer here, or sorry, a question here first from Robert Peace. Go ahead, Robert.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mayor, for that great presentation. I had a quick question about the downtown. On a side issue, I've been very happy with staff in economic development and tourism who are currently working with us very closely on developing some exciting new plans for potentially hundreds of new jobs in the Soo. And we've been very pleased with the city's response to that in looking at all these issues. Of course, we're located in downtown as well on Queen Street. And I'm very excited about the plaza. I guess in my comments here, one of them is the problem has been, and we've all seen the negative comments throughout the city, is I think while the idea has been great, I fear to say that the marketing of the idea and the communication of it has been very poor, and it's put the people who want to support it sort of up against a wall as being the bad guys or the idiots and that kind of stuff that we get thrown at us for trying to support it. The other issue is, of course, that this word plaza, I countlessly see on social media being misconstrued as being another station mall, you know, a mini station mall. What do we need another plaza? We've got a half-empty plaza. And the word square sometimes can go a long way to, so I don't know if there's any discussions still to reinvent the communication strategy on this, because if there are downtown businesses that want to promote this and not be embarrassed to promote it, then I think we've got to get together with the city. I felt there's been, and I could be wrong on this, but I felt there's been a bit of a disconnect between, again, the existing downtown businesses and the city staff in marketing this. I was part of a small committee at some point that was discussing this. And we weren't sure if we were supposed to be fundraising for the difference or whether we were supposed to be marketing. And if we were, what was it that we were marketing? And where are things on that so that as partners in this, we can really help promote this idea? And I'm really excited too at step by step, the hotel being redeveloped, this property sold the other night being redeveloped. I think the downtown is moving in the right direction. Just let's harness the people, to be able to make it work.
So listen, thanks for the question. I appreciate the positive comments about how the staff's working with you and your team on those initiatives. Tom's on the line, and I'm sure he'll pass them along. But I thank you for that positivity. But look, I think you've landed on an important point, and I referred to this earlier. I had talked to the city staff about finding a mechanism whereby we could show everybody what the final vision of all this is, because I think that's part of what's missing here. You referenced private sector investment; it's happening significantly, but I do think there is a communication issue on the plaza. Part of this is how social media kind of gets away from you, but I saw the same thing with the Bay Street project. Right when we first started talking about that at council, there was this reaction where I didn't get a positive outreach on Bay Street. I didn't get a positive email on Bay Street. Nobody wrote to me and said, yeah, that's a great idea. Go ahead and streetscape Bay Street, narrow it. It was all fairly negative about what we were going to do on Bay Street. When Bay Street was done, a ton of positive comments came in. I received letters in my office. I received emails. People would see me on the street and say, I love Bay Street. I kind of feel like that's what's going to happen with this project. But we could do a better job getting the community excited about the project. So I think that's a failing on our part. I think there's much more we can do to get the community excited about it. But there are a number of people that are excited about it. But Robert, I think you landed on something that I've noticed, that there's people that say to me, I love the project. There's people that own businesses in the downtown or are investing in their businesses in the downtown that say, we love the project. We really want to see it move ahead. But they're anxious about publicly indicating that. So I don't think that there's a lack of support for this project the way that some of the people that are opposed to it represent it as. I think that there are a number of people in the community And thank you for having the courage to express that idea. You love it, but you're a bit anxious about it because when you come out in favor of it, people call you a name. Well, I'm sorry that they do that. I can't control somebody acting kind of inappropriately and treating someone else poorly, but we could do a better job explaining the community the importance, showing the community the whole vision, and explaining the community the importance of the vision and why we're doing it. And the other thing is, there's a lot of confusion about the funding. There's this notion that if we, so it's not all of the money is not our money. You know, about half the money is our money. But there's a notion that if we didn't spend the money on this, we could spend that money on something else, like a residential withdrawal facility. We can't. Like the money that we're spending on this is infrastructure money that we have, or community development money that we have within our own budget. So we're not adding anything to the levy. So it's not actually going to be a levy increase. We have budgeted for this, and we are using federal funds that is for infrastructure that we can use for this type of project. So we couldn't take this money and use it for the things that people are telling us that we should be using it for. We've got to use this. We got to do an infrastructure project with this money, right? So that's what we're doing with it, and we're matching our money to it. But we're not going to be taking our money and putting our money into like non-jurisdictional things that we can't put our money into. So I think I think if people understood that the money going to this, would it be going to those other projects? You might lose some resistance there. So thank you for your input. I think your perspective is correct. I think there is better work the city can do to show the community the whole vision and to get people excited about the project. And
if we can have the tools, if we can work with the city, like I'm open to anybody coming to me and saying, here's a kit, or here's some tools, or how can we develop something to better promote, especially this summer where people are going to be out and there's some events on Queen Street, that we have some kind of presence out there educating the public. I'd be happy to volunteer that time to do it.
Yeah, and this was my comments to Malcolm and Tom, that there should be a vision where people could see the marina and the Woodnarf, like Spring Street, and the plaza and the Mill Market and the new Queen Street streetscaping, right? Like, and see it all. And it's like, you know what, that's going to create a beautiful heart in the center of our downtown. That's going to be really cool. And it's going to be consistent with the efforts that private sector is making to improve their buildings and to invest in the downtown. So I know that Malcolm and Tom are both on this, and hopefully your comments add to mine, and we look at ways to do that.
Thank you. I will just read a comment here before I move on to our next question. We have a comment from Kathy Surrett with the Indigenous Friendship Center. And she says, Mayor Provenzano, as you exit as mayor of our city, she would ask that you encourage the upcoming leadership to continue the relationship with the Indigenous leadership in our city. It has been wonderful. And she, as the executive director of the Indigenous Friendship Center, appreciates the urban Indigenous people, would very much like to keep the wonderful relationship going. So thank you, Kathy, for that message. I am going to now go and we'll take a question from Dan Gray with Sioux Online. Dan, you may go ahead.
Derek, before we get to Dan,
All right.
I can't say too much to Kathy because I think I'll get emotional if I do. But I want to recognize her leadership. I want to recognize and thank her for everything that she's done for the community. And certainly in my heart, I very much do hope that the relationship that we've developed carries on. But you were instrumental to that guy. And you were the first person to reach out to me, and maybe at one of the last days of my term, I can come by the Indigenous Friendship Center and we could have coffee. So thank you for those comments, Kathy. Yeah, Dan, whatever Dan can ask his question.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dan.
Hey, Mayor Provenzano, I know we haven't always seen eye to eye on things in the community. I get that. I'll admit to that. I also appreciate answering one of the questions I was going to ask earlier today, but you did answer it here. I do have a simple question though. With Malcolm leaving next year after the election, those are some awfully really big shoes to fill down at City Hall. He's been the epitome of leadership for the community. He always is there to answer questions. He's always somebody that any mayor or council can turn to for responses. What is your advice to the next council about picking somebody with that large profile in our city?
My advice to the next council would be try and get Malcolm to stay. Not believing he'd want to do that for the entirety of the council term. frankly, I think they should look for somebody that has the ability and the experience and the skills that Malcolm has. Now, you won't be able to find somebody with that much experience at the municipal, like with our municipal corporation. But there are a lot of good people around, and I think Malcolm is a model for a municipal CEO. We're incredibly fortunate to have him. He's been a pleasure to work with, and he will be. There will be big shoes to fill for sure. So my first piece of advice would be try and get him to stay. My second piece of advice would be look for someone that has the integrity he has and the wisdom he has, and really the some of the experience that he has, because you won't find somebody with over 30 years of experience here. But he's certainly done a great job, and it's been a pleasure to work with.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. I have a couple follow-up questions here that have been written in that I'm going to ask both of them, and I'll let you handle them. They're both around the bus station. So the first question was, is there any plans currently in progress for handling congestion in the area of the new bus station? And the second question following up is there a plan in place for the old bus station location once it moves?
So the first question, I think that was discussed. Glad to see Marchi, Council Bruni on the line here. I want to thank him for coming on the line. He can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that issue of traffic or additional traffic or congestion was addressed before council when we had these discussions. And I think that the response from the engineering reports and staff was that area has the capacity to deal with the additional traffic that the buses will represent. The buses don't represent a significant amount of additional traffic. They come and go at prescribed time. There's a limited number of them. And people often get to the bus station by bus or by foot, as opposed to, by vehicular traffic or by other cars. So I don't think that was a significant concern, but my recollection of it was that whatever additional traffic is created can certainly be handled by the infrastructure that we have in place. To the second question, I know staff was tasked to take a look at that and work on what we will do with that space there. That's fluid. I'm sure they're working on it. Council hasn't received an additional report on that, and often I don't get the material well in advance of council getting it. I do get material in advance of council getting it, but not in a significant manner. So there's a number of projects that Malcolm and I stay in touch on regularly. That isn't one of them. So I can't tell you where staff is with that piece of property and what the intentions are with it. I'm sure they're working something up and looking at it, but you'd have to get a more specific answer from staff itself.
Great, thank you. I don't see any other questions or hands at this point. So I just did a quick survey. I am going to pass it back to Trish here, but I just want to ask you give you one more chance, Mayor. Is there any other closing term or anything you'd like to add here before we pass it back to Trish?
You know what? I'd like to say thank you to the Chamber for hosting me, for giving me this opportunity to speak to your membership and the community, and for the work you do in our community on a day-to-day basis. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you. Before I pass it back to Trish here, I do just want to say a quick thank you to you as well from Strive and the Chamber. And we've heard a lot today here about addressing economic development, attracting people to come here into Ste. Marie, dealing with our aging population and our aging workforce, even more specifically to our group here. And I just want to acknowledge that we have a lot of people here on the call, and whether we do it one way or the other way, we're all working towards those same goals. So I appreciate your time here serving our community, helping to work towards that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I am going to pass it back to Trish. Trish, all yours.
Thanks, Derek. And thank you all again for attending today. And as we wrap up today's agenda, I would like to thank you once again for supporting the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce. Your engagement benefits local business and the community as a whole. And we always thank you for joining in our conversations. If you're not a member, please consider joining. We are the most trusted organization to represent your business and connect you with our elected leaders, government officials, and business leaders. And finally, to Mayor Provenzano, thank you again for taking part in today's discussion. With the changes and challenges that business continue to face, discussions such as this provide our membership with the opportunity to gain insight into the decision-making process and the considerations taken while making these decisions. We know that you've made the decision to retire from municipal politics and that you've indicated this will be your final term. And on behalf of the Chamber, we would like to thank you for your service to the community and our populace. We look forward to your continued engagement with our Chamber as a member and as a business leader in our community. Just a couple reminders as we sign off today. Our next fireside will be with MP Terry Sheehan, and we are currently working on finalizing that date. So keep an eye out on our Chamber website as those details will soon become available. And our annual Outstanding Business Achievement Awards will be handed out on June the 16th. More information on that will be coming out shortly. In the meantime, it's the last call for our Business Award nominations. The deadline to nominate a Chamber member business for any of the 16 awards will be Friday, April the 1st. Please take a few minutes to nominate a local business that you feel is deserving of this recognition. And we're also looking forward to relaunching, finally, in-person networking events, starting with our first After 5 event in almost 2 years. Can't believe that's been that long. We hope you will join us on Friday, April the 8th, from 5 to 7 at the Marconi Cultural Center. Our members will enjoy a casual networking, hors d'oeuvres, scavenger hunt tour of the Marconi. Attendees will also have a chance to get a half-price ticket to the Brian T and the Sinister Hearts concert that follows the event. And you can also pre-register at our Chamber website. So thank you all again. This concludes our Fireside Chat event. And once again, thank you to Mayor Provenzano. Thank you to Derek for hosting. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care.
Thank you very much, Mayor Provenzano.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.